Okay, here's a weird one to do a song review on, but I was sitting down at my stereo yesterday with a cassette tape copy of The Longs, The Way We Walk, and I was listening to this song or group of songs called The Old Medley. And I want to talk about it because I actually really love it. And I think with a few little minor things, I think this is spectacular. I think it's an absolutely spectacular thing. I wish I was old enough to have seen this live. I want you to let me know in the comments if you were on this tour and you saw this medley live, and if each song was a surprise to you, if you thought it was cool what they did with Illegal Alien, or if you were excited to hear Stagnation again or to open it up. So let's talk about the songs real quick, because this is a 19 and a half minute song or a group of songs. Now, I will say a caveat. I'm not a huge fan of medleys for Genesis. Like sometimes I think it's good. Other times it's like, on the latest tour, for example, a lot of them were truncated, right? The acoustic medley was okay, although some of those tunes I wish I could have heard it with the big band. Fading Lights being truncated was annoying. Some of the transitions were kind of weird too. They just didn't feel great. There's been some very classic medleys over the years that always kind of end with Afterglow, and I'm pretty okay with that. Those have always worked pretty well for me. This is a special one because in the 90s, when they're far away from their old songs, they bring out this medley that really hits some deep cuts. And then they touch on some of the other songs that they weren't able to get off into the main set list. So let's go through the whole track listing here. So the big bulk of it is Dance on a Volcano, which is really cool. I think a lot of people would have been excited to hear that because they probably didn't play it on the Invisible Touch tour, and they probably didn't play it on the Shapes tour. Correct me if I'm wrong. So then we go into The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, and I do believe that transition is really nice, really smooth. Again, I only like a medley if the transition feels good. Then we have the transition into the musical box, but not the whole of the musical box, just the ending, very similar to what we have on Seconds Out. So that's cool. That probably checks a box for some of the older fans at the show. This could have been a very long pee break for all of the I Can't Dance and Hold On My Heart fans. The transition from the end of the musical box into Firth the Fifth is really cool. It's led by Chester starting to play that beat that's very similar to I Know What I Like, which was always made Firth the Fifth into I Know What I Like a really beautiful transition because there's kind of a similar beat. In fact, this kind of like really funky rhythm is carried through on Cinema Show and I Know What I Like and Firth the Fifth. So it works very well. The transition into Firth the Fifth is a little bit strange because we have this big triumphant finish to the musical box, and then very quickly we're into this groove, and then we start up into the kind of instrumental version of Firth the Fifth. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this would be a time when Phil and Chester are playing together. I think this was the moment when I was listening to it last night where I just thought, wow, like this kind of like continues to get better and better and better, right? I mean, Dance is great. Don't get me wrong. The Lamb is, it's cool. I feel like they've used The Lamb over the years as a way to just kind of check that box of, yes, we played something from that album. A really great long jam too on that guitar solo, Firth the Fifth. One of my favorite Genesis movements of all time. The way that solo ends and kind of like the electric guitar rings out, and then the drum beat happens again, and then Phil comes out and says it's 1 o'clock, time for lunch. That transition into I Know What I Like is one of my all-time favorite feelings from a live experience with Genesis. It gets me every time. And I know I've heard people complain about like how many 9-minute live versions we have of I Know What I Like. I don't think I could have enough. In fact, in my like bootleg collection, because my bootleg collection starts essentially from selling them by the pound and goes up until like the Duke era and then there were 3 era, pretty much every one of my bootlegs contains a version of I Know What I Like. That was like the one staple. It's my favorite song. I have it tattooed right here in Phil's handwriting on my arm. So you can't play that song too much, in my opinion. So at that classic moment where Phil is doing the tambourine hits and stuff, and like the band comes down before that like floor tom rise, they actually do the tambourine solo And then they go back into like a more of an instrumental chorus, but then they bring it back down again and they play these two chords back and forth of the song. And then Phil kind of shoehorns in some more songs. So we have the old medley, which we've always had an old medley. And now we're having what's considered to be a new medley. And so we're doing That's All, which they didn't play on this tour, which is surprising to me because we have a copy of That's All live on the shorts. So where did that come from? They must have played it once or twice live. Anyway, because it's not part of the normal set on the Way We Walk tour, he shoehorns That's All, and it works okay. Then he shoehorns Illegal Alien, which actually works not too bad. So he's kind of checking some of the boxes because they have way too much material. They have all of the old hits. They have Invisible Touch hits, and they have tons of We Can't Dance hits as well. And then some of like kind of the deep cuts from We Can't Dance, like Driving the Last Bike and Fading Lights that they want to get through as well. So there's no time for some of the smaller hits like Abacab or Illegal Alien. So this is a way to kind of shoehorn in That's All, Illegal Alien. And I think some people would dislike this, but he also kind of like says like one or two lines of Your Own Special Way as it kind of transitions into Follow You, Follow Me. What I like about the Follow You, Follow Me part is that the band does shift chords a little bit. So they actually start to play the melody of Follow You, Follow Me, because pretty much leading up to this point, they're going on the two chords back and forth from I Know What I Like, these two chords back and forth. And it's just Daryl who's doing the That's All electric riff. Then he does the Illegal Alien electric riff. Then he does the Follow You, Follow Me electric riff. But the band does have to shift because the chord changes are pretty dramatic in that song. You couldn't just stick to those two chords. This is the moment where it starts to get a little bit awkward because now we're starting to get really into Follow You, Follow Me. And we're kind of wanting the band to jam that out a little bit because it's super emotional, goosebump raising. Whereas when he's just kind of like mouthing the words to Illegal Alien or That's All or Your Own Special Way, it's not that great. But when he starts to do Follow You, Follow Me, we're like, oh yeah, this is a great song. We're jamming to it. Then they have to cut it off. And I was kind of like, oh, okay, this is getting awkward. Now where do we go from here? But that flow into stagnation, that like vocal chorus outro of stagnation that they've been doing for years on the back half of I Know What I Like, works so well and really does, because it's really a part of the song now, right? Look, when you hear, I Know What I Like, you expect to hear stagnation now. And then you do finally have that drum fill, and back into the final chorus of I Know What I Like. And that's what makes the song 20 minutes long. According to Wikipedia, they touch on misunderstanding at some shows. So let me know if that you ever heard that. I didn't hear that in the live recording. Let me know if you were there. First of all, I want to know two questions. Number one, do you like this? Do you like this particular medley? Do you actually like any of Genesis medleys? Or maybe what's your favorite Genesis live medley? I think this one's pretty good. And then I also want to know if you were there. If you were there in the early 90s and you saw or heard this live, what was that experience like? Because you're kind of wondering what's going to come next, right? Usually after Firth, we're going into I Know What I Like, but some of those other stuff could have been kind of interesting to you or surprised to hear. Let me know what it was like to experience this live in the moment without being spoiled by any Facebook groups that wouldn't have existed back then. So I'm kind of curious. I love this medley. I'm going to listen to it again. 20 minutes, well worth spending. Let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button for exclusive videos, behind the scenes content, and to have your say on future topics before I film. Have a look at our Patreon page. Thanks for watching.